Peace be with you. Good morning. I just got back from Sacrament meeting a little bit ago. I'm about to go take Yeti to the park and endure more cedar. Y'all, like I am like fluffy. Like I'm like my face is swollen and it was so much fun. And I'm like, I think it's because of the cedar because someone mentioned it today in the Sacrament meeting and I was like, oh yeah, like there is cedar. And someone else mentioned it like a couple days ago and I just never noticed it until I wake up and I feel all swollen like a little chubby bunny. So I'm like, oh, I guess the cedar is impacting me. So I'm gonna go out and play and walk with Yeti in it more. Anywho, I wanted to talk about my Sacrament meeting and I wrote my letter to the Deseret bookstore because I got my stuff in the mail. I think I released the video where I talked about the phone call with them. I'm pretty sure I did. I made another video, a couple of videos. I don't release all my videos, guys, but I don't know if I'm pretty sure I released that one. Anyways, I ordered this and I put on my the inscription, I put it all in small script and selected cursive, but I put all cap letters. And so it's not supposed to look good or it might be confusing or whatnot. It actually turned out really beautiful. Like it looks nice. But it was just like atypical, right? Because usually when you select cursive, you select cursive because it flows and it looks nice. And I literally inputted all capital letters. So it's like, hey, you're defeating the purpose of cursive. Are you sure you want to do that kind of thing? Are you aware of how cursive works kind of thing? And so they called me and reached out. So I wrote them this letter because I was so impressed with their customer service. I'm pretty sure I talked about it. I did release it because it was in my Mexico video. But I got my package yesterday and it's like perfect, right? I got this because this was from the first general conference that I attended and it was just like sentimental to me. Elder Suarez from Brazil, he's my favorite. So I want to read through it. I'm going to take this to the park with me when I go walk Yeti and I'm going to go read through it. But also, I wanted to write this letter to the Deseret bookstore because I was so impressed with their customer service. Because if you remember back, a woman called me from the bookstore saying, hey, we just wanted to double check your inscription, your imprinting, thinks they do a free personalization. And so I called her back and I was like, hey, like I'm really impressed that you guys caught this. This is like, Latter-day Saints, you guys are like known, if you're going to have the title Latter-day Saint, what does that entail? Like what would a person look like that has that identity or that label? And they met every criteria of what you would anticipate and expect from someone with that label, right? They're paying attention. They're not on autopilot. They're paying attention to the symbolism, the depth, the layers, the meaning, the nuances, and they're unafraid to like halt production or halt normality to bring up a question or voice curiosity or concern regarding something that they wanted clarification on. And they did all those things. And I was just so impressed with them. So I wrote them a letter. And so this is what I wrote. Dear Deseret Books, I recently purchased words in bound and printed form from your store because it innately carries the identity of Latter-day Saint. Thus far in my adventures into physicality, I have been impressed by this particular thread that has emerged from the sanctified tapestry of Christianity. It is why I purposely chose the official bookstore of the Saints of Latter Days to acquire meaning through such reverent expression of communion with the divine. The two selected creations I purchased personally hold existential depth of sentimentality and sacredness to me. For the book I referred colloquially to as the triple threat, right? This is the one that has the Book of Mormon, Doctrine and Covenants, and the Pearl of Great Price. And y'all, I don't know why people don't talk about the Pearl of Great Price and the Doctrine and Covenants more. But even like it was fun because at my Sunday school lesson this morning, actually, we talked about, coincidentally, it was on this card, the section Genesis 6 through 8, Moses 8, and I was like, oh my gosh, I read that last night when I got this because I was so excited I got it. And I was like exploring the Doctrine and Covenants and stuff. Y'all, Doctrine and Covenants are beautiful. I loved it. I understand so much more now that I've read the Doctrine and Covenants as to why certain behaviors have arose. Which, by the way, I came in this morning. Hold on, let me finish this letter. I came in this morning. I'll say that the two boy missionaries got reassigned. We got new missionaries at our ward, and I was like, what? Where do the ones go? Anyways, so the two selected creations I purchased personally hold existential depth of sentimentality and sacredness to me. For the book I colloquially refer to as the triple threat, there was an option for free personalization in the form of imprinting. Being that I enjoy articulating myself through the bounty of form and imprinting, right? I created an organization of letters that could easily be presumed to be ambiguous, yet perhaps familiar in subtlety. Although personalization is offered across many organizations, right, like Yeti, which, by the way, I'm drinking my last Zevia. I found a random can in my fridge, and I was like, oh, perfect. Although personalization is offered across many organizations, businesses, and products, what the employees at Deseret Books demonstrated was exemplary of Christ-like behavior. Not only did they exemplify characteristics and traits that make anything involving monetary substance valuable, right? Because this obviously, right, even with scripture and stuff, there has to be a price on it. There's a production cost to maintain things in the modern world, and arguably like in all scales of time that humans have utilized, right? You can't make a living unless you bring something to the table of worth and value that can be utilized like on a larger scale. So that's where money comes in. So not only did they demonstrate Christ-like behavior, right? Because nowhere and anywhere on their website does it, like, I compared it to Yeti. That Yeti, like if you go on their website and try to like do this free engraving thing, or they have the little deals sometimes, there's like 3 or 4 things that you have to check, and you have to like recertify and re-verify, like, hey, you're aware that whatever you put into this box, like that is it. You're not getting a refund, blah, 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 right? Deseret Bookstore didn't have any of those things in place. They literally just have a box that says like personalization, and it has like the different examples. It lists the box like what you want, confirm what you want, and that's it. There's no other screen. When you check out, there's nothing else. Yeti doesn't have that. Yeti has multiple steps along the way on different screens being like, hey, you customize this product. Are you sure this is what you want? Like, we're not, like, there's no guarantees on, you won't get a refund on this. There's no replacements. This is what you get kind of thing. Deseret Bookstore, on the other hand, didn't have any of that, yet they acted, their behavior demonstrated they had those policies in place, but they didn't have to necessarily list them. Does that make sense, right? And so they went above and beyond by halting their assembly line, being like, hey, we just want to verify your imprinting, your engraving. So I said, like, that was absolutely exemplary of Christ-like behavior. Nowhere, shape, or form did they need to do that, but they still did it anyways. And they maintained quality and coherency that can be found within the Doctrine and Covenants, within the Book of Mormon, right? Within the Pearl of Great Price. So I said, not only did they exemplify characteristics and traits that make anything involving monetary substance valuable, but they more importantly embodied through coherency of action and word the proclaimed LDS Doctrine and Covenants that are required for the creation of Zion, right? I'm pretty sure that's like the end goal that everyone wants to like hope that they experience when they're still alive on this planet, to experience the state of Zion that is possible. And I'm trying to like make people aware, like, hey, that process is going on right now, but depending on how much awareness is geared towards what traits and qualities actually create that atmosphere and create Zion, that's what's required. And this is proof and demonstration, hey, the type of behavior that they're demonstrating, this is the type of stuff that causes Zion to become reality type thing. Put simply, they appear to have complete alignment with what is presumed would occur from encountering a human bearing the label of Latter-day Saint. This testimony of truth begins from a voicemail I received from an employee named Debbie. She called to confirm my imprinting was truly desired due to my selection resulting in a seeming paradoxical outcome involving beauty and purpose. I was aware of why the moment occurred because I selected small cursive script, however, inputted all capital letters to be utilized. Anyone that is familiar with cursive knows the coherency and flow of such a choice disrupts the purpose of chosen modality of script. However, not everyone would halt production to seek clarity. The Latter-day Saints did. After a brief phone conversation with Debbie, I learned that it was another employee who noticed the disruption of usual pattern and decided to halt production to verify the outcome was desired. At least 3 LDS members were involved in the creation of this particular opportunity, which is a rare feat of organizational coherency in both secular and spiritual spheres of influence. Because, guys, what they essentially did was play phone tag. I mean, maybe this is like normal in certain cultures, but anyone can see, like, within their own workplace. I've seen it multiple times in the military. The larger the scale of the system, the more difficult and challenging it is to maintain coherency from individual to individual. You can look at a family unit, like within a husband and wife. Look how much miscommunication just occurs between a husband and wife, a child and a parent, whatever, right? Think about on an organizational level, between 3 separate independent people. They all maintain coherency and were able to pass the message and reasoning of why this was halted in the first place, right? Anyone's played the game of phone tag can easily convene how even like 3 people deep, the message gets misconstrued or something gets lost. This is the same thing that like hospitals spend billions of dollars on, trying to make sure they have patient safety outcomes, driven outcomes, right? That the Swiss hole doesn't align to cause some sort of catastrophic outcome of a patient or to life. What LDS innately demonstrated in this small, minute detail of clarifying it and an imprinting on a book, right? To pay attention to halt operations for something as seemingly as small as that shows, hey, if that type of behavior and characteristics is evident in something as small as this, there's probably high likelihood and possibility and probability that it's going to be present at greater scales of the organization itself. Does everyone see how amazing that is? Okay. So yesterday I received my package in the mail, and today I could not help but gift words of acknowledgement for my gratitude for such a transcendent experience involving the Latter-day Saints. Thank you for what each of you bring to the table. It's moments like these that solidify why this particular religion exists and is critical towards the trajectory of the species and planet itself. Again, that correlates and aligns to LDS doctrine and things like that, right? The formation of Zion, the second coming, the judgment day, all these things, right? It comes down to it's like, well, there's a lot of different circles and things like that say like, hey, that type of reality is already here, but you just have to be able to perceive it to be able to experience type thing. But in order to experience it, more people need to be in alignment with what that looks like. And this is an example of what it looks like, kind of thing, what life looks like, if anyone's paying attention to it, right? Anywho, so I went to and this is an example too of how life flows beautifully. Because I went to the ward this morning, and actually yesterday, right, because I received the invite to the behind the scenes, like the secondary look at the community aspect, the community outreach to, what's it called? Goodwill. And I set that date up. I have a confirmed date, and the organization, like the liaison with like the public at large, are creating opportunities. Hold on, I have the email here. Oops. Because I sent this to the bishop, because a week ago in Mexico, we had the conversation. I sent him the screenshots, just being like, hey, like, this is, like, I'm aware about, because he made me informed of, hey, this is why we made the decisions we did. And I said, okay, I understand that. It's very obvious a misunderstanding is occurring. Here is further evidence, or here's further data for you guys so you can see a more complete picture. Gave him that, right, the screenshots and things like that. And then he said, thank you for sharing these communications. I'll be in touch. And then I wrote back to him at that time before. I said, coherency and doctrine, the coherency of doctrine and covenant isn't easy to embody nor understand. Humans require validation and proof of consistency, regardless of the source of trial by faith. If mortal probation is finality, the evidence isn't perceivable from a perspective of eternity until physicality has reached its own thresholds of becoming aware of embodied ignorance. Okay. And then I said, there is more support evidence of proof involving the concept of truth if it is desired to be perceived. The purpose of my approach to the saints of latter days was because I assumed they were aware of the weight and responsibility of chosen label and name. If those defined as LDS cannot perform nor demonstrate coherency of testimony required for what is defined as the latter days, then perhaps they should be aware of their place and contribution towards Zion will deviate from desired expectation and proclaimed outcomes, right? Because they're the ones, like, if you think about like all the religious context and whatnot, people refer to like heaven or the end state of the world or after the second coming or things like that, this completion cycle, as different things. Within the LDS framework, that word that signifies all that meaning and stuff like that is Zion. But because of that, it's like I'm getting conflicting things, or where people like assume like, hey, like we're building towards Zion, but like that's not going to happen in our lifetime. We're awaiting further instructions type thing, or we're waiting for this certain things to happen in order for us to be aware that like we are going to be the ones that experience Zion. And I'm just like, okay, well, if you guys keep that mentality, then yeah, you guys are going to be like the Israelites marching around when Moses was like, okay, you older generations, like the younger generations are going to be the ones that are going to experience it, because you older generations just are unaware of it, whatnot, right? Anyways, going off on a whimsy. I didn't hear back from him. That was after in Mexico, right? But then I got this Goodwill tour set up with like the CEO's office, and they wrote me back because they confirmed the date, right? Because I'm attending their graduation for, they call it the Academy, which is like their community outreach program. And I actually took this yesterday to go eat at Valentine's Day and celebrate Valentine's Day and just look over this. Oh, and I actually brought I brought this, and then I brought my Cataclysm at an advanced, and I was just reading the church history. Oh my God, I was having so much fun just connecting all these beautiful threads. And on Valentine's Day, y'all, it was just like, oh, I was having an extraordinary time. It was like tasting the rainbow, right? Like, look, every color of the rainbow. I'm aware the rainbow is very symbolic in LDS doctrine. I was like, hey man, rainbows popping up. It just depends on what form it comes in. Do you guys recognize it? Oh my gosh, hold on, field trip actually, that reminds me. Because speaking of Catholicism, oh. Speaking of Catholicism, remember my story? Because the original parish that like rejected me for 1.6 miles, and it's because I basically made them uncomfortable, y'all. I could articulate why and how. They got uncomfortable, and people feel uncomfortable. They don't know how to categorize things into like appropriate labels, or it doesn't fit neatly into a box or criteria of what they're used to. They tend to distance themselves because they're afraid of it, right? But they gave me this official paper. I added this down here, but they gave me this official paper to be like, hey, like this is proof that I am writing to inform you that shredded the form, right? The PII stuff. But then at the bottom, she left a Bible verse. And I was like, what is this Bible verse? Or the church did. And it's Numbers 6:24-26. And I was like, what? No one ever quotes Numbers. Like, why Numbers? And it says, like, the Lord bless thee and keep thee. The Lord shew his face to thee and have mercy on thee. The Lord turn his countenance to thee and give thee peace. I found out that is the Aaronic priesthood blessing. And I was like, oh, what a beautiful tie-in, right? Catholicism tying to LDS. Again, like, do you see how these connections just coincidentally line up and align when you're in a state of coherency, right? It shows proof and evidence of certain things occurring, or coherency across different structures and perspectives and scales, right? Anyways, I got the email and I sent this to the bishop. I screenshot because I was like, hey, this is a perfect opportunity when I got that invite to Goodwill. And they confirmed the tour date. And they even said in the email, they boldened, is there anything in particular you would like us to touch on? And then later on, they boldened later on, would you like to invite others to come with you? And then the rest of the email is in like regular font. And this is the strategic partnership and events manager from like the meeting I had with the CEO or whatever, the behind the scenes thing that I went on for the Ivy League. And so I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect opportunity, right, for LDS to be included on this. So I wanted to invite them. So I wrote to the bishop yesterday. I was like, good afternoon, Bishop. I haven't heard from him. I have no idea what's going on with the membership stuff. I said, good afternoon, Bishop Pavel. I have a unique opportunity, and for some reason, the Latter-day Saints came to mind. I was fortunate enough to be offered a tour of Goodwill's community outreach service branch of their organization and wanted to inquire if anyone from your faith desired to be present. I plan to respond to this email from their POC in 3 days, so that's tomorrow, with further details responding regarding the number of attendees that plan to participate. So far, it's only me. However, if the Saints of Latter-day simply desire to be present because of the gift of opportunity, please make me aware. I plan on attending services at the ward this Sunday, today, so if you have any questions, you can ask me then. He responds immediately. I sent him the screenshot of the email, right? And he responds saying, hi, Sharon, that may be of interest, and I'd lean on President whoever who lead the adults to share that and see if there is interest. Do you have the address for the location? It sounds like a neat opportunity. And I was like, bro, you just listed 2 other people. I have no idea who these people are. Like, you do recognize, man, that I'm not even an official member. Like, that's kind of in limbo. I'm like completely sidestepping that, but you're treating me as if I'm part of the organization, and I have no idea who these people are. I don't have their numbers. I don't have any of that. And so I'm just like, hey, I'm giving this to you because you're like the only point of contact that I am aware of that I can pass this on to, that someone maybe within the organization can utilize, kind of thing. But then he like just kind of like sidestepped, being like, oh, hey, you can contact these people if you want to. And I'm just like, I don't know who those people are. kind of thing. And I like at church today, I don't know what the bishop looks like. And so like no one approached me at the service today or like, and so I'm just like, man, I don't know what to do now. Anyways, I said this tour is for their branch called the Academy. It's the community outreach aspect of their business, which is why I extended the invite. I only have a date so far because this is a follow-up opportunity I created for myself after attending a behind-the-scenes tour with the distribution center, right? Their main like money-making force part, right? And it even says it in their supporting mission or whatnot. I found some very cool things in here. Like for instance, even on their budget, it follows the Fibonacci sequence, right? Guys, like there's like 1%, 1%, 2%, then it jumps to 37% and 59%. I'm like, okay, you do recognize that's the Fibonacci ratio, which nature naturally derives from, and it jumps scales. Like you jumped it, you following the pattern, but it's scaled upward. It's almost as if you hit another harmonic once you got into like these larger subsidiaries or revenue sources called the business services and donated goods retail. But then if you look at where those funds are allocated to and what they do, it seems as if the lower monetary donations, like the budgets of 1%, are what actually create the community outreach and impact. And that's evident by the words that they utilize here that reveals where the budget comes from of what drives these opportunities. And it's clear that these things come from only majority the resources that are attributed to donations or like the other monetary, like the lower income pot things. And it's like, okay, it's really extraordinary that you can have something as low, like the smallest scale, the Fibonacci scale, that's clearly evident in your data and numbers. That small number, the smallest minute number that is often overlooked, is creating this level of impact and this diversity, this umbrella. Do you guys recognize that that's what's occurring here? So what are you doing with the 99% rest of your budget? Like, how are you guys utilizing your money, and is it actually efficient, kind of thing, right? Anyways, I just figured that's not part of the community service aspect, though. I'm not only focusing on the community service aspect when I go to this, but I wanted to invite LDS because, again, and I write this, I say my focus and follow-up questions will be regarding their community outcomes and rate of measurement towards desired goals compared to their mission and vision statements, because they literally write in their mission and vision statements how critical it is. And you can look on their website, they go into the bullet points of their values. They literally write in the values, like service, they say the reason, and they capitalize the reason we exist is because of the community, to help the community. It's like, okay, if that is what you guys are portraying in your mission, vision, and value statement, how well does it align with that when I go to meet the community service aspect of it? And that's what I'm gonna harp on. And so that's why I tell the bishop, and I was like, hey, this might be something, again, right? You guys, your organization innately is very heavily geared towards the community aspect, the community outreach, helping build Zion, helping spread Christ-like behavior, helping spread these things that create the right conditions and environment that make it possible for Zion to even exist, right? For poverty to go away, for there no longer to be gun, like school shootings type thing, right? For those types of things to occur, for cancer to no longer exist. Those types of things are only unlocked when the innate population or species demonstrates that it is capable of the behaviors that are innately required to handle the responsibility of such innovation and technology and knowledge and advancement, right? So anyways, I said my focus and follow-up questions will be regarding their community outcomes and rate of measurement towards desired goals compared to their mission and vision statements. I figured this may be something LDS would desire to experience, since the underlying framework of logic behind being utilized is what is referred to in doctrine per an LDS lens. A lot of Goodwill's operations are foundational aspects required for what LDS defines as the building of Zion. Therefore, I figured this may be beneficial towards that desired outcomes. I made a grammar error there. But right, that's why I invited them, because I was like, hey, I see a correlation stripped of the labels, right? If you just looked in and saw humans moving around and doing stuff and saw their outcomes, you'd be like, huh, the community aspect of what Goodwill is doing is very correlated and aligned to the actions and behaviors and things that are desired from LDS. They're both utilize different terminologies or frames or perspectives. However, the outcomes are the similar and desired. What can we do to make this more efficient, right? Because I'm just one person. But if someone like as that has the potential, the framework, right? The honeycomb, the resources to utilize that information, if they have access to it, they can bring it back to their home organization and maybe find innovation or advance, right? The Holy Ghost can work through it and give them revelation, and they can bring it back and add to the Doctrine and Covenants, whatever, right? That's kind of like what the purpose of that was. I'm like, hey, I see benefit to including you guys in on this conversation, and so I'm extending an invite. And they're showing no interest whatsoever in being included. And I'm like, okay, that's weird. And even when I came into the service today, they made an announcement. Again, this isn't because of me, but I was like, that's very odd that we just got 2 male missionaries, new ones. And I was like, well, what happened to the old, like the new ones? Like one of them like literally just got here for like a month, and the other one wasn't here for a few months. Like it was atypical to have them rotate out, but the female missionaries are still here. But I was just like, why would they rotate? Like they literally just got here kind of thing. I hope this wasn't because of me type thing, right? Because I'm aware that, right, things are hidden in plain sight. You can piece together things. And I just found that curious and unique that happened. And also that like still I didn't get approached by anyone, even though I extended, like I was like, hey, this goodwill thing's on the table. We talked about membership. Like none of those things were brought up. I kind of lingered a little bit, waiting to see if anyone would come up to me. No one did. It's like, I don't know who these, like, I don't know what they look like. I guess I could have been like, hey, where's the bishop? Or who are these people? Because they got name dropped, and I just want to follow up with them on this opportunity kind of thing, right? I didn't do that. Because it seemed as if, again, people were intimidated. That's the easiest way to do it. And it's not an LDS thing. This is just like a normal human being thing to be like, just get intimidated or whatnot. But coincidentally, I walked in and I kind of sat in the back a little bit, or where I sat last time I went. And one of the women that did her testimony, I found her name was Heather. She did her testimony, I remember, asked her name again, about how her husband was a translator, and he said, in like Pashto, he said in the Afghani language, like, peace be with you, brother. And her words just resonated. And I told her previously, I was like, hey, your words really resonated with me about what you said, how comforting it is to just hear your native language and hear your language when things are chaotic and whatnot. And like, it's like a place of uncertainty. And that just stuck with me so much. And coincidentally today, right, I was sitting behind them, like a few pews behind them. But then she got up, I sat down for a couple minutes. She got up and came like, hey, you know, our family's over here. It's good to see you back again. Like we have room on our pew if you would like to come sit with us. And, you know, like if you don't want to sit back here by yourself, we just want to extend an invite to sit with us. And I was just like, at first I was gonna be like, oh no, I'm good. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go sit with you. Like, cause I'm aware anyone I come close to, y'all, they end up distancing themselves the more they the more into the closer they are with me, or the more exposure they have to me. It's directly correlated to the amount of distancing that they assume once, like, all of a sudden it seems as if like pieces kind of click into place a little bit. People like distance kind of thing. And I debated, so in my head, I was like, I don't want to go through the same cycle again of like making friends, people being warm and inviting, and then all of a sudden when they gain a full greater picture or things click into place, they distance themselves or they like go away kind of thing. I'm tired of that. I'm tired of it. But I was like, you know what? I'm going to go sit with these people. That was really sweet of them. And also, I was pretty tired this morning too. Again, I was trying to get over the cedar. Like, I woke up with like puffy eyes. I felt like a chipmunk, and I was like, I just feel swollen. I feel like icky. I wasn't very talkative. My brain engine wasn't firing all the way. But then her sitting next to me, she's like, oh, I love your pants. And I was like, oh, thanks, because these pants, guys, I bought them. I bought them on Instagram, and I have like 2 stains. Look, I stained them. That's from when I ate Middle Eastern food, or I tried making Indian food. And then like this stain right here, this bright yellow one is from another time I was trying to eat some other ethnic food. So these are like, I bought these pants. These are like kind of like my traveling pants. Like they're like canvas, and they're actually men's pants, y'all. But they were just so comfortable, and I liked how they looked and the durability, because they're kind of like, yeah, that material. And I was like, oh, these are like the perfect adventure pants for when I go on like journeys, you know. And so I wore these, and so she's like, I love your pants. And I was like, thanks. Like, I got them from Instagram. I didn't really tell the full story of where I got them from. But the fact that she noticed my pants, and I was like, You notice the one thing I was wearing? Actually, I also have this on, my little thing that I bought from the LDS temple. I wore that today just in honor of, because I had my new book. I had my new book that I purchased, and I was so excited for it. And look, I love like reading stuff in the Doctrine and Covenants. I was just having a great time. I was having a great time reading this, and I was, so much fun. And anyways, I decided to use, actually in the back, I started utilizing some notes for myself to try to translate, because I kept hearing certain phrases and words. I'm like, what does that mean? Like how you guys are using it doesn't mean what the word is actually saying, type thing. And I learned a lot more today when I came in more with like an open mind and open lens of being like, I'm coming in here with like the assumption of the assumption that the words carry through the centuries of history that humanity has experienced. But let me step into a framework where I am not assuming or not aware of all that centuries of assumption and meaning that the word that they selected are being utilized for. Then what do they represent? And I was like, that makes more sense now. So I understand why, but I also understand why there's so much friction when you have like external people approaching you guys, because the words you guys select, they innately carry the weight of like a lot of centuries of experience and history and meaning that isn't synonymous with how LDS references it. And people won't be aware of that because the explanation is assumed that people understand the meaning or interpretation of how LDS phrases things. And people on the outside aren't aware that that assumption exists, that the innate invocation of these words carry meaning, right? Or carry the assumptions underlined with it. Anyways, so I was sitting next to her and I said, oh my gosh, I wanted to tell you, because I was trying to think, I was feeling the Holy Spirit, right? I was feeling the vibes. I was like, oh, this is so sweet. Like, she noticed my pants, like the one thing I'm wearing that carries significant meaning to me. She commented on them, and so I was like, you know what, I'm gonna pay her back a favor, because I told her previously about her testimony, about how I enjoyed it, but then I didn't tell her an update about how it's still influencing and rippling outwards. And so I said, hey, by the way, I wanted to tell you a story after the service. Like, I want to tell you something about how your testimony still influenced and still played into a trip I just took to Mexico. And she was like, okay. And the service was great. There's people that came up and spoke. I didn't get a chance to meet the new male missionaries, but I'm sure I'll get a chance to meet them. They had a kids choir singing, and it was so adorable. All the different ages, and at one point, you know, like the primary kids, they're just like fearless. They sing they sing proudly because they're just like fearless of like being up there and singing the words. And it was adorable. And this one little kid, he brought two of his little dinosaurs and had them up there. It was like kind of like his safety blanket. It was like him carrying like his Book of Mormon up to the pulpit with him, right? He carried his dinosaurs and he was singing along, and after they were done, he just like took his dinosaurs down and took them with him. And I was like, it was so adorable. It was adorable. It reminded me of like that 18-year-old that got up and bore his testimony that had like the Yahweh written on his knuckles, right? That 5-year-old kid, man, he brought his little toy dinosaurs, and that was his source of courage in that moment to get up there. Because there was kids, even young ones, that were like they were scared. You can see they're nervous to get up there and share their testimony and sing in front of an audience. And it was so beautiful to see like the personalities, like those personalities that they demonstrated even as children were evident in the adult congregation. The exact same characteristics and traits, right? Exact same things go up there. Like, how many people go to like the services and go into things and like wear their favorite tie, wear their like the undergarments and things are correlated to the temple stuff, like the temple endowment and ceremonies and whatnot, right? Those types of things give you, like, even as adults, like a sense of bravery and courage, and it's so cool to be able to tie all that together and see it all. Anyways, the talks were good. Even the guy that they brought in, he was from a different state or something like that. He was like a orthopedic PA, and I was like, that's beautiful, right? Like, my ex-fiance is a PA. I love that tie-in, the symbolism there, right? So I'm noticing all these beautiful cues. Or you can call them synchronicities, right? Loving it all. The one synchronicity that was missing was like being approached by like the leadership to continue on these conversations that we kind of have going, like these lines that are out, right? We have like the line of the goodwill thing now, and we have the line of official membership. neither of those two things were touched on today in person, but everything else was touched on, so that's great. So we're going to talk about that. Because sitting next to Heather and Josh, I believe, Heather and Josh, afterwards, I told them my story about, after the Sacrament meeting, I told them my story being like, hey, your testimony, okay, by the way, like when you said, because the thing that resonated with me the most was how you said how comforting it is when people speak your language or do that kind of thing. And also I remember the Bible verse she mentioned in her testimony was Jesus wept. And I was like, I love that verse too, right? It's just so beautiful about the layers and depth and the things that you can utilize with that verse. So I often quote it as one of my favorite verses. That and Matthew like 7:21-23, kind of like about where you can look that one up if you're interested in it. Those are my favorite verses. But I told her, you shared that thing about like speaking the language and whatnot. And so when I went on a trip to Mexico for a wedding, I actually ended up, part of the reason I rented a car and had the felt confident enough to like rent a car or whatnot. I mean, to be quite frank, I would have still done it even if I didn't hear her testimony and sermon or message or, like whatnot. But I saw that was an easy correlation. Like, hey, I can attribute some of what I experienced, correlate it, and it coherently ties to what she shared in her testimony. That's nothing but validate and show to the person, hey, like keep putting forth effort, keep doing what you're doing because what you're doing matters. And this is how it matters because I'm closing a loop and I'm letting you see the outcomes of you bearing your testimony that one single time. That's what I was trying to show, right? And so I said, hey, like because you said that, right? You getting up and sharing that, I thought to myself, I was like, hey, the easiest way to understand and relate and learn and immerse myself into this culture is to speak the language and completely embody it and do and act as they do or behave as they do kind of thing. And so I tried speaking Spanish and I like went to the car and immersed myself. I dove in and just like went into the culture. And I had the most extraordinary time doing it. And I told the story about how like I told the woman at the stand by the side of the road how I wanted to experience the food of Mexico, not the food of the United States, not tourist stuff. And when she asked me if I wanted salsa, she called it salsa, but she brought back chili oil and chili flakes instead of like the typical thing that you see at like chain restaurants. And I was like, to me, that was experiencing culture. And that resonated with kind of like back to what your testimony said about when some of the times like the most comforting thing or the easiest thing you can do to understand another person is to speak their language type thing and try to meet them where they're at. And that's kind of like what Christ did too, right? The Christ-like behavior of meeting anyone where they're at, regardless of their understanding, and not trying to assert your opinions, thoughts, beliefs into the environment that they have going on type thing. And so I shared that with her and I said, thank you, whatnot. And she was like, oh, that's so awesome. I'm like, yeah, man, you're still making ripples. I don't know how long it's been since you shared your testimony, but you're still continuing to influence and make those ripples type thing. And then we went to the Sunday school. And so we went to actually, because I had never seen her in the Sunday school I go to. And I was like, oh, like what Sunday school are you going to? She's like, oh, I go to this one. It's a smaller group. And it reminded me of the lesson that I got put in at the other ward, the Spanish ward, that I went to for Thanksgiving. They put me into this other class where usually like the missionaries are there, but they talk. She said it's a good place for investigators. So she called me like an investigator. And so I thought that was like a compliment, right? Because she's aware like, hey, you're not a member of the church, but this might be a good place for you to like learn some stuff, right? And I thought that was extraordinary. So I was like, oh, actually, can I come join you at this? I think I'm familiar with what type of Sunday school this is, and it's different from the other one that I was going to with the other family. Oh, yeah, I want to attend this. Like where I'll go to it with you because it sounds like, like a good transition, maybe like a different type of vibe in that environment than the other Sunday schools. Because guys, even when I started, the first time I attended a ward, I asked to go to the primary school, the primary class, because I wanted to start there. I was like, I started there, and then I jumped in other places. But going to this one, I was so happy I went to it because it was extraordinary. There was like 10 homes. There was like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. There was 9 of us in there. And everyone went around the room and said their names. Oh, I forgot it. But it was a beautiful small group, and it felt like it kind of felt like along the alignment with the conversation I had at my OCIA meeting at the Prince of Parish Church with that one female that was from Trinidad. very, very in-depth and knowledgeable. This wasn't quite at that depth yet, but it was still like, it was still sitting and facing and grappling with like taboo and like uncertainty type vibe. And people were like expressing their understanding of experiences, their opinions, their beliefs, and how it correlated to scripture. And everyone was like, it was just a very open environment where things were discussed fluidly and like coherently. And I love that. Like there was no like posturing kind of thing, right? And even at one point, because we talked about Moses chapter 8 for the lesson today. Yeah, we did Moses chapter 8 or Genesis 6 through 11, right? And it talked about the flood and this and that. And it was cool because at one point, actually earlier on, when they were starting the lesson, it started trying to like focus on like the scaring thing. Like someone brought up like the mutually assured destruction of like nuclear, like we're gonna kill each other kind of thing. Like the species is like destroying itself kind of thing. And then quickly, like the people in the room, like kind of just like brought the conversation back on to, hey, let's focus on, yes, the negative stuff exists, but like, let's focus on how we can interpret that through a lens that is productive and not necessarily spiraling into like, fear-driven behavior type thing. And it was beautiful how it guided back to, yeah, those things that were scary, uncomfortable, were talked about and included, but they weren't guiding the conversation. They weren't like, how can we defend ourselves against these evil things? It was more like, hey, how do we navigate this type of environment and transform it in a way that's beneficial and productive and decreases the risk of harm to all life involved kind of thing. And that was like, oh, it was so extraordinary. But when we were talking, we went on for a little bit and we got into, because I know like the helping and like service towards others is like a big thing in a lot of like in Christianity period and even in religious sects, right? There's always some sort of sacrament or some sort of thing that says like, hey, you have to help those that are in poor, help those that are in sin, help those that are like lost or need salvation type thing, right? That need baptism, like show them the way type thing, right? So one of them were talking about like they were going into the subject of the homeless and how like, you know, like handing out money, like giving them money, like someone carries around like gift cards with them and instead gives gift cards out because instead of giving them money for drugs or alcohol or addiction or things like that, they can at least utilize that to go get food. So they kind of like are like guiding their behavior type thing. But then they talked about how one of them outside like one of the casinos in San Antonio, I was like, so it was a casino, but it was one of those like gambling. It was a place that was defined as like a sinful establishment. It could have been a strip club. It could have been like a one of those like Texas Hold'em rooms or whatever, right? It was something along the lines that is viewed as shameful or sinful within the framework of LDS. And one of them, her son works there and is like one of the security guards for the place. And he said it's so sad and disheartening to see these bums and these homeless people get money, and then they come in from the street or come in from the block or whatever, or the intersection, and come in and just gamble all their money away because they're trying to like win money to like make it big or something, to change it, or they just like waste it all. And this went on for a while, like all sorts of different opinions were going around, and finally towards the end I just like spoke up because I was just like, well, you know, I actually like I get what you're saying like that, right? Because I was like, these people like in this environment right now, they don't recognize that they're doing the exact same thing. Like they are positioning themselves as the people that rejected Noah, and they're not aware of that. They're playing that role in this like environment right now. Because they even said like how like Noah, or not Noah, was it Noah? Yeah, Noah was faithful and built the ark. But then like all the people like were making fun of him and calling him ashamed and this and that, and just like say like poking fun of him. But then when all the animals came up and when they closed the doors, all of a sudden they're banging on it, being like, wait, like, you know, that kind of thing. And at first I was like, well, first off, back in those days, right, if people were actually about to die, like people go to great lengths. They would have got on that boat. They would have found a way to, they would have got ropes. They would have hammered and cut through that ark. They would have tried to make a hole in it as much as possible. Like, have you ever seen them back in the old days try to scale walls and the things they do? Man, as recent as World War II, they had kamikaze pilots and 9/11, right? When life and death is on the line and things like that, people go to extreme lengths. So I have a hard time believing that like these slowly rising flood waters, people weren't able to somehow damage the ark in some way, shape, or form, or get on board type thing. But those details are left out. Anyway, that's semantics. We're not going to get into the semantics. We're not going in there, right? What essentially was happening was, like, the people outside of Noah's Ark thought that they were righteous, thought that they were living, and they were making fun of Noah, being like, Noah, you're a weirdo for doing this. But then when the floods came and they all got destroyed, all of a sudden Noah was like, oh, like, thank goodness I was following God's will. I was following the truth. And I was like, okay, like, this room, people don't realize LDS believes that they're in the position of Noah when they haven't even thought or can't even contrive the possibility that they might be in the position of the people, but even though they think they're in the position of Noah. And so the conversation, you could tell, was going about it that way with some of the things that they were saying. They were like positioning themselves as like being in the position, the people of Noah, and feeling bad for the population at large that was outside the ark. And from my perspective, looking at and observing the dynamic going on, I was like, you guys aren't aware that you are part of the population that's considered homo sapien, right? Noah was still a homo sapien kind of thing. And I actually did like in Moses, because they talked about this, and this was what clued me in onto a lot of the words like agency and sacrifice and stuff. Because in verse 27 in Moses 8, it literally says, like, the words that they utilized to describe Noah. It says grace, just man, and he utilizes the word perfect. That is like one of the few instances, like, why in this instance are you guys referring to Noah as perfect and a just man and grace and utilizing those words, but when you refer to yourselves, you don't refer to yourselves in that tone and shape and form? Like, why is that? Like, why don't you utilize those words when you talk about yourselves, kind of thing? So, and you could tell by their reaction, right? And I understand that, because utilizing the term perfect, for some reason, it's automatically assumed, well, that's you being egotistical and arrogant, and you're being narcissistic or something like that. It's just like your lack of discernment and understanding and meaning and awareness demonstrate that you even articulating that assumption shows that you don't understand the concept behind the word perfect and its utilization type thing, right? Same as the same way as like the outside world, and like I didn't understand why LDS utilizes certain words when it's like they're not aware of like the huge heavy connotation and history that word implies. It's like, why did they select that word, kind of thing, right? It's like the same reason an organization doesn't select the word racism to be included in their doctrine. Like if the word repentance was actually the word racism, it like causes it's like dissonance, right? It's because that word, that random arrangement of letters that we have identified with meaning to correlate to outcomes and things associated with the concept of racism, they're distasteful. And so same thing's happening. Anyways, when they were telling the story, so finally I spoke up I was letting everything listen for a while. So finally I just like said one monologue and answered everything. And I was like, okay. First of all, I like what they said in that, because everyone's sharing like what they personally do. So I was like, okay, well, I'll share what I personally do. And I said, hey, well, like with the homeless type thing and that type of situation, I've been in that place before too. But with like the philosophers, like whenever I interact with them, and I call them philosophers because they have homes, right? Calling them homeless already invokes being like, well, they have a home, they have a place they live. It just doesn't meet your criteria nor definition of what it's supposed to look like. Therefore, you utilize the term homeless. However, homeless carries a sort of connotation that could be perhaps interpreted as derogatory from their lens. And so that's why I refer to them as philosophers. And so when I interact with philosophers and they ask me for money or things like that, I offer them effort. And I say, hey, I will give you this if you help me carry my groceries or do some sort of task, right? I'm not just going to give them something just because they spoke words. I'm going to say, hey, if this is something you actually truly want and value, are you willing to do something for it? And if they're not willing to put forth effort, like carry my groceries from outside the store to my car, then then I'm not going to give. They turn it down. I'm like, okay, then you're turning down earning something. I'm not going to just give you something. And so I said, in the case of that, like, right, where they're giving away gift cards instead of money, I took it a step further, and I was like, okay, well, like, regardless, right, because even so, no matter what you give them, how you give it or what you give, you are assuming that they're going to use it a certain way, and you want to control how they use it. You're casting judgment onto their underlying assumption and meaning at whatever path they're going on in their life, when we have all these examples of like God working in people's lives and taking them in different directions, and you don't know their trajectory, or you don't know what plan they have for them, yet you're willing to easily cast judgment or dictate your actions on how you interact with them, and innately invoking these things like giving gift cards or giving things just effortlessly, and thinking that embodies, I didn't say that embodies Christ like a hair, but like effortlessly just giving them a handout, but then guiding your actions to try to dictate their actions, shows that perhaps you are wanting more control or outcome, a trajectory of a situation, because you are causing judgment onto them without actually realizing a full picture of it. And like, for instance, like for your son, for instance, right? He has no, like for the instance you gave the story, I said this in general, I said, where does the line get drawn where discernment gets invoked? You guys talked about agency, right? So where does that agency come in to delineate where you want to be incorporated in part of the process? Because your son, right, he's okay casting judgment and saying things about those people, but then again, he also acknowledged, because in her story she talked about how he said, well, these people are giving me my salary, so I mean, I'm not going to complain too much. And it's like, okay, well, you're not going to complain because you're part of the system. You're receiving benefit from those people that you are judging and casting judgment on and feeling bad for. Well, then how does that make you separate from the system? Because you're included in it, like you're part of it. And so if you truly wanted to demonstrate, like, you know, the behavior that doesn't act, like, where does the discernment kick in, right? I said, oftentimes people utilize Christ-like behavior, but then they don't scale out or look at the entire picture, and they don't recognize, like, well, where does the discernment kick in? Because you're part of it, right? You're part of the crowd that people feel bad for. You recognize that, right? Because of your place in the system and allowing it to occur. Like, you work for the establishment that allows those people to squander their money and continue those habits, and you're okay with it. Like, you supporting that establishment innately allows it to exist, therefore people are going to continue utilizing it because it's available, kind of thing, right? Anyways, and I said that kind of monologue, but I said it very gently. I said it like in a subtlety that acknowledged and highlighted everyone, and didn't necessarily point out like, this is bad, this is good, kind of thing, because I don't like working in duality. I just let assumption fill in what people thought. And people recognize it. They're like, yeah, that makes sense. And I was like, yeah. So like, that was a great moment, right? I got to add a little bit of my version of discomfort to the realm where we were all expanding. But as we were finishing up, it was super awesome, because like, even the guy they mentioned and did a really good job of it, like these things that people often define as coincidences and whatnot. So I just got the hiccups. Define as coincidences. He articulated it as like, hey, he utilizes that as his like awareness. That's like a reminder, because his watch is correlated to his dad, and a really beautiful memory tied to his getting that watch when he was in Hong Kong after World War II, and like buying that watch. It was very significant, and correlated to his dad, and that memory with the significant role his own father played. And so because of that, it correlated, that story that he told innately correlated to the Doctrine and Covenants, and how his father, with the divine authority and the priesthood, played that role and played that significant figurehead in his life, and helped developing him and getting him to this moment in time of being able to answer his own calling and fulfill his role in working with the Latter-day Saints, or having the label of Latter-day Saint, right? And so it was cool to see that. And so he even said like, hey, when these things happen, right, these like symbols and these coincidences occur, it's up to our awareness to be able to utilize, to understand like what they correlate to, and figure out like what they mean. And it was cool. It was a really cool conversation. So after we were done, said goodbye to everyone. But then talking to Heather and Josh, I was like, hey, I was just so impressed by them, right? Like for them, because after I sat in that class, I realized, I was like, this class is specifically designed to be uncomfortable, to tackle and say things that are uncomfortable. And everyone in the room did it. Everyone was in that room to not be comfortable. Everyone was in that room to actively pursue growth and be aware of it to its full depth. And the level of conversation that everyone gave was beautiful. The guy next to me, I forgot what he said. What did he say? He said some word like you added to he started with an E or something. And it was like an unusual word. And I was like, wow, I was impressed that he utilized that word, because it was it was very profound. The word that he selected and how he articulated what he experienced. Like, thank you for your contributions. It was blah, blah. It was something to eat. And I was impressed by it. I was like, you are a deep thinker, dude. Like, he reminded me, the words that he utilized reminded me of reading the Doctrine and Covenants type thing, kind of like the type of conversation going on. And so even with Josh and Heather and what they were saying, I said, hey, like, what made you guys attend? Like, why do you guys attend this Sunday school? Because you guys naturally attend it. And they're like, oh, it's because they said, like, we like the smaller setting, and like we like the, you know, like the type of conversation, the smaller setting. It just feels more intimate. And I was like, well, from my perspective, you guys seem like you consistently, like, and I've seen it previously when I sat next to you and whatnot, and things you say, like, you guys tackle discomfort. Like, you guys lean into uncomfortable situations because it's like you recognize that's where the most growth and your awareness wants to go and place you. And you guys do it. And that's very impressive because it takes a lot of effort and fortitude to be in this room. And I recognize every single person that was in there, they were doing some epic things just by how they articulate themselves and how they navigate and the things that they're trying to make sense of and to make coherent across all scales in their life. They're doing the work there. And I was so impressed by it. Like this one woman, for instance, very outspoken, but she was talking about how her boyfriend, she's like, my boyfriend has all this Christ-like behavior and all the things he does in his daily life. But it's just like, why don't you why don't you talk about God? Why don't you come to church and stuff then, man? Why don't you read like the gospel? And I was just like, I was laughing to myself because I was like, dude, you just like called yourself out. Like you just pointed out your own awareness as to what you're struggling to understand and be conceived, because it's like, you already understand, you're already perceiving everything about him is demonstrating everything that you believe in and you go to church in and you contrive to. But he just doesn't utilize those terms and he doesn't actually go to church and do what you do. So it confuses you because you're like, yo, you have all the innate things that we talk about, but you just aren't actually part of the club. And you could be more, you can become more if you actually just we're in the fold, we're within the boundaries of what I perceive as officially being Christ-like behavior. But because you're outside of it, I'm identifying everything about you as Christ-like, but because you're not officially a member, you're different. Like, and she viewed him as like off the path and needing to like, you know, be baptized and this and that. And I was just like, in my head, I was just like, bro, you just pointed out everything about him that is like, you pointed out the outcomes of baptism, and you're having problems rectifying how your boyfriend is able to live by the Doctrine and Covenants and the Book of Mormon, yet not actually be officially Mormon. That you just articulated that out loud. You do recognize that, right? And I was like, wow. I mean, but then I was like, well, it makes sense that he's with you because look at how you're articulating yourself and how extraordinary you are. So it makes sense that you two are together because you're operating on the same wavelength, even though you're utilizing different language to describe it. The fundamental workings are there. And you just articulated it kind of funny. So I was giggling a little bit, being like, girl, like you and your spouse are like this. You can already tell by how you talk about him and his actions and how you speak. Like you two are like Heavenly Mother, Heavenly Father, right there. Boom, perfect example right there, kind of thing. Anyways, so that's fun. And also I found it curious too, because if you hear, I recognize that now because everyone in the comments, they say like, oh, we have no problems talking about Heavenly Mother and this and that. But then every time someone gives a testimony, I only heard one person say Heavenly Parents. Every other time they only say Heavenly Father and Jesus or Holy Spirit. There's no mention of the mother. And so I'm like, okay, that's saying something, right? The silence speaks for itself. Because when you say these words like Heavenly Mother's included, but then when everyone gets up to their testimony and every time everyone talks about it, even when you go through and you look at the general conference, let's look at how much Heavenly Mother is actually referenced. And so then it's going to be like, okay, you guys say Heavenly Mother's present, but where is she? Where is she? She's not included in anything, kind of thing. And so I found that intriguing, but I see examples that like, you don't need to invoke her name or the word Heavenly Mother to see her presence, because without her presence there, this wouldn't exist. So it's like, but you guys it just seems to be like you guys are aware of that, But then it's like, why do you have such a hard time saying her name or saying those words then, kind of thing, you know? Anyways, that's good enough. That's good enough. I had a really great time in that Sunday school, and I had a really great time meeting the new people I met and attending that Sunday school. So I plan on going back next week because I loved it. It was, and again, it was really cool sitting next to Heather and Josh. And Heather, actually, she dressed like, she looked like she was from the Victorian era, y'all. She was like dressed perfectly. She had like lace on too, and like a brooch that had like a silhouette of like the old timey silhouettes. And I was just like, I feel like I just went into a time capsule where I'm like talking to like the OG founders of the Latter-day Saints, like talking to you and your husband kind of thing. That's how it felt, with just like the level of openness. I mean, this is how it always starts though. So, but who knows? They seem very grounded in their testimony and navigating discomfort. And it reminded me very much so of the original founding members, the founding families that created the Saints of Latter Days back in like the 1800s. So, oh, that was amazing. And so, yeah, that's good enough. I'm going to go to the park now. Actually, I might go get some McDonald's since I'm already looking chunky. And because like I didn't get my caviar meal that they had for Valentine's Day, they ran out. I was at the Goodwill tour, and I was trying to load it on my phone, and I couldn't get it to load. And I low-key almost asked while I was on the tour to one of the workers in the distribution center, be like, hey, can I jump on this computer real quick to try to go to this website for McDonald's to get the Valentine's Day caviar kit? But it wouldn't work. The site was so overloaded, it didn't even work. I was so bummed, and I was just like, I didn't get the caviar kit. And so I kind of want to go eat a McDonald's Happy Meal to make up for not getting my caviar kit. I'm like McDonald's' biggest fan. And for them to like have the logistical awareness to have such a short little like thing that like completely collapsed on itself promotion. I'm like, bro, you guys were aware this was going to be an extraordinary thing. Why didn't you plan for this type deal kind of thing? Oh, so annoyed. Oh, like speaking of which, hold on. Last night, like the Valentine's, speaking of like big event, right? Because I went to go eat like the endless sushi that I went to before previously. I wrote them a 5-star review on Google because of how extraordinary it was, right? Actually, let me see if I can find this review. Last thing, I'm gonna actually go. I wrote this Google review for this place that I went to because it was so extraordinary. Reviews, where are my reviews? No reviews yet. Okay, anyways, okay, so I wrote this beautiful review for this restaurant. Oh, here it is, reviews. And I went there last night. I was like, you know what? It's Valentine's Day. I'm gonna treat myself. I'm gonna go eat this, like the all-you-can-eat sushi buffet or option, whatever, menu. And so I did that. And when I showed up, though, I was like, holy cow, this place is packed. Okay, here's my review. 5 stars. I went here. I don't know when I went here. Okay, this is my original review. I went here on a whim today and had the most delightful and delicious time experiencing the all-you-can-eat menu option. Besides the bounty of dishes to enjoy, the details of design and layout of the establishment flowed with the grace and finesse often seen in Japanese culture. There were details with the light fixtures, colors, and small aspects of architecture that left me easily wondering if I had accidentally transported to the land of the rising sun. Like literally, even going to the bathroom, guys, like the wall, the light details, how they have it, the colors and the scenery, it looked like waves going on, like the waves, and it looked like the lights were like bobbing in the waves and like radiating up beams of light into the darkness of the waves going towards the bathroom. And I was like, it was just beautiful. Everything flowed very seamlessly. Like the fixtures, it made it look like a Japanese tea garden kind of thing, right? And I said, as beautiful as those aspects were, my waitress, Shireen, or Sharon, I think I pronounce it Sharon. Sharon was actually what made this unique gastronomic encounter inspire me to write a review. Her attentiveness, hospitality, and effort was what turned this from an ordinary dining experience into something truly extraordinary and memorable. Her innate presentation and character made me curious, to which, for my questions, she shared a little of her own personal life story that I couldn't help but be filled with awe and inspiration. I was so impressed with her that I couldn't help but ask for a photo before I left. If anyone was desiring to experience a taste of the Far East, it most certainly can be found here. And on my picture, I put the picture of me and her smiling, because like she's from Indonesia. She commutes like 30 to 40 minutes to this restaurant because she loves the atmosphere I'm working for this organization, because of the quality and the environment that they bring to the table. And I was like, I can see why. Like, this place is extraordinary. So when I went there yesterday, it was packed. The entire parking lot. Like, I had to park. It was kind of like in a strip mall area. I had to park like a couple like blocks or like whatever parking lots further down, because it was so full. And I even went around the back of the park, like the back of the store, and there was no car, like no parking available. And I was like, this doesn't surprise me, because this place, my first time I experienced it, it embodied the Japanese culture in every way, shape, or form. And Japanese culture is known for its hospitality, for being aware of its guests and catering to its guests and making sure that the customer has a transcendent experience that is equivalent to what Japanese culture like embodies and entails. And so when I came in, it was like completely packed and people were waiting, and I saw like there was a couple seats at the bar, and I was like, you know what, can I go sit at the bar? It's like, I'm not gonna wait, kind of thing. And so they let me sit at the bar. And as I was there and I was talking to the bartender, being like, yo, like these two bartenders being like, dude, it doesn't surprise me that you guys are packed. This is extraordinary. You guys, like, I talked about all the things I just shared. And as we're going along, I overheard that one of the managers I overheard him say, hey, you guys aren't getting a break today, but we're getting pizzas because it's too busy. There's no breaks today. And I saw Sharon, like my waitress, I saw, because she came up, she was working, and I saw her face just kind of like be like she was like, you know, like, man, like, kind of like her face was like, again, like, this is ridiculous. Like, we're jam-packed. Like, it's Valentine's Day. And I even got a rose, too. Oh, where's my rose? I put my rose in water. I got a rose from them. Like, I was like, this is so awesome. Every customer got, like, a rose and stuff. But I was just like, whoa, whoa, whoa. Did I just overhear you say that to your employees that they are not getting any breaks today, but that yet you're going to get them pizza? I overheard that and I was like, skirt. That's not okay. I was not okay with that. And then I watched, because I saw how the employees reacted, and like they were like, right, the place was packed, the place was busy. And I was like, did he just say you guys haven't gotten a break today? Like, well, no, we didn't get a break because it's just like, it's just really busy today and this and that. And I was just like, yeah, but why aren't you getting a break type thing? And then like they had like a little laminated sign too with like 3 drink specials. And I found out one of the bartenders. I was like, oh, that's cool. You guys made this for Valentine's Day. It was like a little like Valentine play on thing. And she was like, yeah, I made that yesterday. And I was like, what do you mean you made that yesterday? He said, well, we didn't have anything, like we didn't have any drink things earlier in the week. So I approached our manager or approached our team and was like, hey, are we doing like a drink special? Are we doing anything like a bar special for the drinks for Valentine's Day? And everyone kept saying no, like nothing kept brought up. And I guess last minute, the night before, they were like, oh yeah, can you do like the drink thing? Can you make the drink special and make something? And so she made 3 drink specials, selected them, made the little advertisement for them, constructed them, like designed them and laminated them and everything. And then the way she told the story, it was obvious that it was like an oversight. Like leadership was just like, oh, they didn't actually catch that detail. It was the workers that brought it up, being like, hey, don't you think it'd be a good idea to have drink specials for Valentine's Day, this like big day that you guys are primed and anticipating a large crowd for? And like last minute, they're like, oh yeah, hey, like go do that kind of thing. And so she did it. But then also like they're not treating all their employees well with like giving them pizza and telling them they're not having breaks. I had issues with that. Right? And I saw what it did to the employees. And first off, that's illegal. That's against business laws. And then, so I was mad. And so I was like, hey, after sitting there for a second, I was like, I need to talk to your manager. Can you go grab your manager for me for a second? And they're like, yeah, we'll grab him. And I was like, is he the supervisor? Is he one of the owners of this place? Or I was like, is the owner here? And he's like, actually, he's one of the owners. And I was like, can I talk to him? And so I got him, and he was like behind the bar, be like, hey. And I was like, no, let's go talk over here where it's a little bit more private. And there are some customers there and the people. And I was like, I don't want to have this conversation in this environment. So we kind of pulled him to the side. And I was like, hey, as a customer, I've come to this place once before, and I come back here again because this place embodies the Japanese culture through and through. Everything about it, from the details to the service to the food, everything. But what really highlights and brings out that Japanese culture that makes people like me as a customer, a paying customer, come back is because of the employees, the experience that they create, because of the employees. And just coincidentally at that moment, Sharon walks by and gives me a hug. Like, oh, Sharon, like, thank you, hi. And she gave me a hug. And I was like, hey, how are you? And then she like continues back. And I was like, that was actually my original waitress that I first had when I came here. She's the reason that I come back here. Because of people like her, because of the experience, the employees like her, that the environment she created is why I came back. I overheard you. As a customer, I overheard you. I said, it is completely unacceptable. I said, that is nothing like Asian. That does not embody Far East culture nor Japanese culture. What I just witnessed you saying and how you treated your employees, that was nothing. That was completely decoherent to that 5-star review I wrote and not expected of an establishment like this. That is completely unacceptable behavior. And he started saying something, and I was like, okay. He's like, that is not who I am, but that's not how we treat our customers. That's not how we treat our employees. And I said, okay, if that's not how you treat them, then why am I as a customer overhearing you say that they're not getting a break today and that you brought them pizza instead? That is not Japanese culture. That is not Japanese culture whatsoever. That is not the 5-star review that I wrote about. That is not what these employees deserve. That is not the type of leadership that you innately have expressed like now. And so that is why I'm stepping you aside and making you aware that that is inappropriate behavior for you as a business owner. And he understood that. And I was like, do you understand that? And I said, you guys are remarkable here. It's that type of behavior that's going to ruin your reputation. So you might want to be aware of what you are doing and what you're portraying by that type of action. And he understood me very clearly. And so when I went back, actually, I informed this bar staff and stuff. And even Sharon came over later being like, hey, and I was just like, hey, man, yeah, I told your boss, I said, that is completely unacceptable behavior for him as a owner and a manager and a leader of this organization to do that. That is absolutely unacceptable, and I have no problems bringing it up to him. As a matter of fact, if any of you guys receive any sort of retaliation or anything in response to that, please make me aware, and I will be back, and I will have no issues continuing having this conversation with the owners of this organization if that's the case. So please make me aware if that happens. And they were like, yes, ma'am. But she told me, because like another one I found out, she commutes like over 30 minutes to work for that place because they love the environment and the ownership and stuff. And I was like, okay, if you have all these people, like you guys have like, I was like, these people, quality people are coming here to work for you guys, suffering to bend over backwards for work for this organization, then me as a customer who enjoys the output of that environment and going to speak up when I see something decoherent to the productivity and the beauty of what they have created, right? That type of leadership jeopardizes the beauty of the organization. And so I made sure to make them aware of that. And even Sharon told me too, she said, oh yeah, actually, because she like busts her butt. She picks up every extra shift. She works overtime. She said they cut down her hours because they didn't want to pay overtime. And so they cut down to make sure she works the minimum. Once she hits that point, they say, go home. You can't work here anymore. Like you can't work for the day. You're done for the week or whatever because you hit your hours. And they'll try to find someone else to fill it so they don't have to pay overtime. And I'm like, that is not okay. And so, yeah, I brought it up to him. I have no problems. I was like a customer at this restaurant. I overheard the staff do that. And so I told it to him. So that was fun. The employees enjoyed it. But now I'm going to go to the park and get some more pollen fever or cider in my eyes and whatnot and get some McDonald's. So clog my arteries while I'm at it. But peace be with you.